So one of the most simple yet useful pieces of advice that I've been given in my life, this is going to seem very basic, but the truth is that's all the more reason why it's some of the best advice I've been given. You know, it's not overly complicated. It's not something that you have to really ponder to get the meaning of. It's something that just works. You know, like I feel like some people overcomplicate their way out of success. Anyways, the best piece of advice, or say one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given. Very simple, but it was to not quit. And not quit pretty much means consistency. Like, just keep going, just keep doing it, keep showing up every day, and just not quit. There was times where, you know, in this particular endeavor where I was given this advice, I wanted to quit numerous times and never did. And that's literally all it took, and I made it to the end. Like, he saw it on my face, and he's seen people in my position a million times, and he's seen it on their face, and he knew what the answer was. And, you know, he was really my friend, you know. He was a friend of mine, an instructor, but a friend as well. And he just knew it. He could see it on my face. He'd seen what I'd gone through. You know, there was a point in which, you know, he was helping me walk down the hallway because my right arm and right leg just wouldn't wake up and move. And I was just passing out in the middle of hallways, and he just like helped me limp my way to somewhere I could rest, and then bought me a coffee to try to like help me get back into the game. You know what I mean? And he'd seen it a million times, so he just gave me that advice because he knew what I was thinking, or, you know, kind of what I was going through. Anyways, this is the advice though. Like, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to get in your way and make you want to do it. But it's like, if you show up and do whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, if you do it tomorrow too, then all those reasons and all those things that came before you to tell you to stop it, all of them failed. You know, whatever it is that's trying to hold you down and hold you back, you know, all these excuses and reasons that you can give, all of them are instantaneously shattered because you know, the next day or whatever the next repetition is, you did it anyways, and you're still there, and you just didn't quit. And it's odd that it's that simple, but it is. I'm not sure if I already talked about this one, so I might have to delete this in case I have. But there's another one that I have written down here. It says to use fear as a weapon. What this is referring to is basically creating this motivator that is you accepting the reality of the world around you. And if you're okay with that, then you have nothing to change. There's nothing in your life for you to do. But if you can take a real serious and I mean brutally honest look at your life, if that's something that doesn't scare the shit out of you and like put a battery in your back to make you want to push forward, you know what I mean? And because that's what's going to happen. And it's like, if it doesn't scare the hell out of you, then you're probably not being honest enough. You're probably not looking at it enough detail. Like, I mean, quite simply, if you're not making progress towards whatever it is, or even just maybe you're not trying to achieve anything, you're not like super motivated to go and do anything all too great, but you'd rather maintain your health, you'd rather not become overweight, you'd rather not die, you'd rather, you know, not be homeless or whatever it is. You know, these things are a slippery slope and they can get out of hand pretty easily. If you're looking at this in a real situation, okay, so I'll give you one. This one's probably something that I could even work on myself, right? Like, I mostly abstain from having personal relationships with people. You know, I have like my immediate family that I care about, and that's really all I associate with for the most part. If I were to look at the reality of that, like at some point my parents are going to pass, you know, and then if I'm not even maintaining like a super close relationship with my siblings, right, and I'm not making friends, you know, whenever I go out anywhere, then what is the reality of that situation? Like dying alone, which, you know, that's a whole nother conversation, but you know, like if I look down the barrel of that, you know, the reality of that matter is just being alone for decades of my life before eventually dying alone. If that like remains constant and I'm not doing anything to change it, you know, and it sounds like you're being extreme, you know, by putting it into that perspective. But here's how extreme develops. Extreme develops as something that's not so extreme, it's a minor thing that you think's a small thing, compounding over time. Like, it doesn't just stay at a resting state, it grows. Everything that you just leave, untouched, it manifests in its own way. I always say that, life has a way of deciding for you if you don't decide. All right, so I've got another one written here. It's called one-dimensional success. So I wanted to touch on this one real quick just because it kind of coincided with some of the stuff that I said in some of my prior videos about, having false equivalence between yourself and other people that really sit in a different demographic and have different, measurements. They have a different metric of success, and they have different pros and cons that help them towards that version of success. In short, if I think that me and you have the same goal, then one of us is like, your pros and cons might be better suited for my version of success than it is for your version of success. And so things that come to me easily, in your perspective would be like, oh, well, they've got it figured out and they've got all the things that I want. But in truth, they might be totally unhappy with what they have, because none of those things are their own goals, and I don't know. Anyways, moving on. So I wanted to add on to this point by stating that there's with one-dimensional success, right? So I just picture like the overweight guy with like, he's in a red BMW and he's enjoying the shit out of his red BMW, and he makes a lot of money at his job, and he has like a cool car he drives back and forth to his job, like a red BMW convertible. It's just always been stuck in my head. Overweight dude, and he just has a terrible relationship with his wife, has a terrible relationship with his kids, is overweight, unhealthy, stressed out and depressed everywhere else in his life, doesn't take care of himself, just not vacationing, no hobbies, no nothing. His life and everything that, he's focused on, that he thinks, he equates with giving him value and giving his life meaning, all revolves around him being high status at his job and driving a red BMW. Now, I made this cliche character up in my head, but this really fits a lot of people's descriptions, and maybe it's not the same exact thing, but it's the same extreme in that, they have body dysmorphia and they're hyper fixated on making themselves look like whatever they're trying to make themselves look like, or that they think the end all be all is their job, or they think the end all be all is success in whatever single dimension that they might think it is. And there's this guy that I know, he's a great boxer. I trained with him. He helped me even get better. He's a great boxer. He's a pro boxer, actually. He is very one-dimensional in that regard, and I love the guy, and there's a lot of ways in which he does things that's like almost juvenile in certain ways, that he's underdeveloped in so many other ways. It's almost disheartening to watch him sometimes, because like you can just tell he's meant for more. Like he has potential that's beyond the scope of his world. What I'm trying to say is that you will become miserable, if you are focused on one dimension of success. You will ruin your life. You will feel unfulfilled. I think what happens is that people find success to some degree in one thing, and they're like, oh, well, that success feels good. People praise me for that success. This is one of the rare times where I felt in control of my life. And then they get addicted to that, and they remember how many times they tried other stuff that didn't work, and how that feels, how failures feels, and how, people that you love looking at you with uncertainty as to, how will he fare in this, or how will she fare in this. I think it draws such a deep connection that they even, they draw a direct correlation to their way of life and their vitality, and they will defend it tooth and nail, and believe whatever bias makes them, it fits their narrative of reinforcing that skill as important and integral. Like if you were in the entertainment industry, they'll go so far as to die by that hill, to the point of trying to get you to believe that without Hollywood, without entertainment, that life would be meaningless. There'd be no point to anything else, and we all know that's not the case. But my point is like any skill, someone will defend tooth and nail if they become addicted to the praise that comes from it, and the adoration and whatever else, self-image that comes with it. And so that in combination with them being fearful of an uncertain outcome, being they're making an attempt at something new, it effectively puts them in a cycle of being addicted to that one thing, and then people become, however many decades older, and they're still unfulfilled, and it's because they focus on one parameter of success in their life. I think guys get this one bad off in particular. I feel like women are a lot better about looking outside of their life paths and seeing different parts of it that they could, different directions they could go. And ironically, I think one of the reasons why dudes don't, follow these paths is because they're so focused on women. And I feel like women are kind of like, all right, well, dude's there, and I'll come get a dude whenever I need one. Right now I'm doing this. But dudes are less like, at some point you got to get with a chick. So, everything needs to kind of funnel down this life path. Invest in a respectable you. Doesn't that sound positive? We're going to end on a positive note. I thought all of it was positive, but here we go. Invest in a respectable you. This one's simple. Like, basically, you need to look in the mirror and like what you see in every way. You need to be proud of yourself, and if you're not, you've got work to do. That's the way I see it. Like, there's things in your life that you can't change, and in those cases, you got to switch your perspective on it. But there's a lot that you can, and if you focus on all the things that you can change, all the things that you can improve, I'm pretty sure you're going to be satisfied with the result. It's not going to be a perfect world. It's not going to be a perfect you, and deep down, you really don't want there to be. If you focus on the things you can control, and you optimize that to your liking, you're going to have a lot more confidence in yourself. You're going to respect yourself a lot more, and you're going to carry yourself differently because of it. You're not going to be willing to sell out to anybody for too cheap because you know what you've built. You're not going to just accept whoever and whatever in your life because you know how hard it was to become you, and you're just simply not going to accept anything less. You're not going to accept that people treat you badly because, okay, let's say if you spent 20 years like building a model or something, like a life size, whatever, I don't know. You spent 20 years building a house there. If you spent 20 years building a house, if somebody just, you invited over to see your project or whatever, or your house, and they were just kind of like disrespecting it. They were just like knocking on it and saying like, oh, this is a piece of junk, and like, kicking at the doors and saying, oh, these doors aren't even put in right, and just started, just going crazy at the houses you're trying to build. You'd snap. You're not going to tolerate it at all. You have to look at, your life and your body and whatever else it is that you'd like to improve as that. And, it's always blown my mind how people can even let themselves get to certain conditions. I'll end with one. I did say that was the last one. This is a bonus one. And this is one that I'm working on myself. To live life righteously. Like, every decision I make, and this kind of bounces off the last point, being proud of. But, I don't want to feel fear or jealousy or envy or greed or hatred or, even just weak emotions like sadness or, embarrassment or whatever it might be. Like, I don't want to make any decisions based off of any of those things. I want the sole reason for all my decisions to be in order to carry out a righteous action. Like, what is the way to do this that is righteous? And that's what I want my main motivator for all my decisions to be. I want that to be the reason why my posture is the way that it is. I want that to be the reason why I say what I say and why I act the way that I do. I guess that's just my thing, but I think that probably bounces off of, being something proud, being something that you can look at in the mirror and be proud of. Anyways, that's the end of it. This is the end. No Frieza.